Hello and welcome to the Haxton Knits channel. My name is Deanna. I'm a master knitter currently living in Okinawa, Japan. And this week I have a lot to share with you, so I'm glad you are here and back with me today. I hope everyone is safe at home, so grab yourself a drink or your favorite knitting project and sit back and relax. We're just going to talk about what's on my needles and upcoming projects and all of my plans for the coming year as I get ready to move away from my home here in Okinawa. Let's get started. I feel a little bit like I'm revisiting my hat episode this week because I have been knitting all of the hats. And the reason for this is that my mom called me. My mom and dad live in North Carolina, and it's been very snowy and cold. And she said, much to her dismay, that a hat that I knit for her years and years ago had finally worn a hole in it. And she showed me a picture of the hat with a hole and said, should I send it to you? Should I send it to you to repair it? And I didn't ask her how the hole happened, but it kind of looked like a moth might have eaten that hole. And I thought, nope, maybe don't send that one back to me. I will just make you a new hat. And I tend to have a little bit of anxiety when it comes to hats. So I started knitting a hat, and then I was like, oh, but what if it doesn't fit? What if she doesn't like the color? What if? And as a result, I ended up knitting 4 hats. Not just all for her. She happened to mention that the hat that had the hole in it, this was the Langfield hat that I knit for her. Oh gosh, I can't even remember how long ago. I remember she bought the yarn there in North Carolina. It was a beautiful light blue, semi-solid or variegated yarn. And I knit the hat in that yarn and then sent it back to her, and I I cross-stitched a dragonfly onto the hat because she likes dragonflies. And she happened to mention that my dad really liked the hat, that it was too small for him and he didn't like the girly color, but he really liked that style of hat. And so I also set out to make my dad a hat. And so I'm going to tell you all about the hats I made. I actually don't have them here in my hands right now, and that's because I've mailed them out before filming this. But I did film, okay, so I filmed this episode already once, but I was drinking. And I thought I was, just a little bit into my drinking and it would be fine to film an episode, but apparently I was not. And it was a little bit sketchy, and I wasn't really excited about its outcome. So I maybe, when I get back to editing this, put in some of the shots from that first episode, because I had the knitting at that time, so I can show it to you. So if you see some clips up ahead where there's no sound and it's just the present me talking, and the past me showing off the video, and you're like, why is the sound not on? That's why. I'm babbling. Let's just get on with it. So first of all, I want to show you Langfield 2.0. That's what I'm calling it. If you aren't familiar with this pattern, I'm just pulling it up. I have my Ravelry page here right in front of me so that I can reference all these as I go. Langfield by Martina Behm, and it's kind of a cool pattern. It's designed so that you can make it customized fit to any head you want. So you kind of have to have the person there with you, or at least a rough idea of what size of a head they have. In this pattern, you cast on, you kind of make this weird triangle shape, and you just keep increasing and increasing until it will fit all the way around the head of the person you intend. And then you move on to another section with some increases and decreases, and you keep doing that section until it reaches the height that you want, and then you move on to the next section. So it's really a cool pattern. I think it benefits the most from like a color changing yarn. So something where you can really tell what direction you're knitting, because it isn't just your standard sort of this way knit hat. It kind of has like a seam here and a seam there. Not really actually seams. They're made from the increases and decreases, but really cool pattern. I really like it best in like a color changing yarn. But this one was for my dad. I made it with aroma fennel yarn, which I of course bought from the Woolly Thistle. I talked about that a couple episodes ago. And I held that yarn together with the aroma plum, which is a mohair and silk blend. And I really love the way the hat came out. I will pop up a picture here, hopefully, of me wearing the hat and modeling the hat, or it may be a little bit of that video clip for you to see. I knit it just a little bit bigger than my own head. I think my husband's head is much closer to my size, and my dad's is even a little bit bigger. So hopefully it fits, you know, crossing fingers, hopefully my dad likes it. But just in case, I also sent him this hat. You guys saw this hat a couple of weeks ago, the Musselburgh. One of my viewers kindly told me how to pronounce the name of this pattern, and now I have already forgotten. But this is the Isolda Teague pattern, which is of course adapted from, I think, an old World War I pattern. And it's a hat that could be like pulled open to make a scarf or a short, you know, neck warmer to go around the neck, but essentially is a double layer hat because you kind of smush that one layer into the other and make yourself a hat. This one I knit in a local yarn. I got it at the Pandora House, which is a craft shop, a chain of craft shops here in Japan. It is the Daruma Airy Alpaca, and I actually went back to the store to see if I could get some more of this yarn with the thoughts of making myself one of these hats because I really, really like it. But I didn't see any colors that really kind of spoke to me. I was hoping for like a really dark charcoal gray and like a bright yellow or something. But this one, perfect for my dad. I hope it fits him. If not, I always tell my family any hand knits I send them, they are welcome to regift or donate or pass along to someone who needs them. So I never feel bad about sending these off to my parents. But let me show you hat number 3 and 4. So hat number 3 you guys have also seen. It is the highway hat. And this hat is a 2-color brioche hat with some slip stitch pattern that makes sort of a highway of color running up along it. And this is knit in 100% recycled wool. The yarn is by Puppy, which is a yarn store that I visited during my trip to Tokyo. And I'll link that up above because that video does really well. You guys liked that video a lot, my Mount Fuji and Tokyo yarn shopping video. This hat I really, really like. I think it's going to fit my mom a little bit better than my dad, but if he likes it, it's his, whatever works. Last but not least, I knit for my mom a brioche hat, and this hat I didn't really use a pattern, I just kind of winged it, but I knit it in 2 yarns that I have had in my stash for a very long time. These are Ancient Arts. The yarn is Ancient Arts Fiber Craft Nettle Soft DK. It's a nice long word, but they are a wool and nettle blend, which I thought was very interesting. It's obvious that the 2 yarns were dyed with the same color. So there's a dark sort of semi-solid, and then there's a somewhat lighter, more tonal variegated yarn in this 2 yarn set. It's very, very subtle. My husband was like, wait, you're using 2 colors? They look the same. But it is 2 different colors, so 2-color brioche. And I also held along with it Ito, which is Japanese yarn, right along the same lines as the plum yarn. I'm pretty sure it's also a mohair silk. Let me look, actually. Oh, I didn't link it, so you're just gonna have to look for yourself. Ito yarn. I have several balls of this in my stash that I've been trying to find a way to work into various projects this year. So that was 4 hats, and you would think that was enough. That's enough hats for 1 season of knitting, but alas, no, there's more. This right here, I think some of you will recognize what this hat is right away. So this is one of the original Bohus style hats, Bohus patterns. I did buy this as a kit from the Angora Garnet shop, which I've talked about on a few of my episodes, but this shop, it has permission, I can't remember the details, from the estate or the people who own the rights to the traditional Bohus knitting patterns. So I'll link that episode because I definitely talked about that episode there in depth a little while back. But this yarn is, of course, true to tradition, a wool and Angora blend. The dyes are dyed using the same original recipes, and the pattern was just a joy to follow. I kind of had to like wrap my brain around these patterns because they say, you know, it doesn't really matter if the repeats line up, if the increases or decreases line up. It's about this artistic feeling in knitting, which is completely against what I usually think about knitting, which is sort of mathematical and like getting your stitch counts to line up and your decreases to line up and making sort of clear, readable images. This is a little bit more about the feeling and the shape and the texture. It's one of the few styles of color work, stranded color work, where you'll see purl bumps used so regularly. I did decide to go off the actual shaping pattern for the hat. So the pattern itself was a tam hat, you know, kind of a traditional, UFO saucer shaped hat. And I didn't want to wear that. So this is, of course, the Musselburgh hat, number 3. I've knit quite a few of these recently. So here you go. We can pull out the centers. This is the center layer here. And I, of course, used all the scraps and bits left over from the main part of this. So if you are thinking about getting one of these patterns and you're thinking, you know, I have an exceptionally large head, will it still have enough yarn to fit my head? Yes, it will. Because I had enough to make not one, but 2 hats using this particular kit. And I really, really like it. My husband said it looks large on me, but this is really the way I like to wear my knitting patterns. My hats, is I like them to be large and slouchy and snuggly and completely cover my ears, which will hopefully keep me nice and warm where I am heading to next. I mentioned in my previous episode that we're getting ready to move to Germany, and so I have kind of gone into high gear knitting all of the cold weather accessories that I haven't needed here in Okinawa. You would think, though, that now I have 5 hats done this season. I would be done, but alas, I am not. So I actually have another one of these, the Musselburgh hats, using some yarn that I had in my stash, which was the Lemonade Shop rainbow yarn. I'm not going to pull it out because it is still kind of just a brand new cast on, but I've been feeling, I don't know, the hat knitting mojo has been here. And then I sort of started shopping for a haul and ended up buying even more yarn for another hat kit. So we'll get to that in just a minute. I do want to show you, I have one more whip on my needle, which I haven't talked about yet. So here is my whip for the day. This is kind of tricky to show you. Here we go. So this is Esther by Camilla Vad, and I just sort of cast this on out of stash yarn. It was kind of an impulsive cast on. If you are looking at the picture of this pattern right now, you may be looking at it and thinking, your pattern doesn't really look the same. I was following the pattern nice and neatly along until about here, and then I was on the couch and knitting, and I just kind of was in the zone, and I got off on the pattern. I was like 1 row off on the pattern and just decided to wing it and kind of improvise the bottom half of it there. So I didn't go ahead and follow through with the sort of chevron color work that goes into the bottom of the yoke in the original pattern. But it was just a small variation, not a big one. And this yarn is, of course, the black yarn is Patagonia Farm. Oh gosh, I got that wrong. Juniper Moon Farms, and the yarn is Patagonia, which is a beautiful 2-ply woolen spun yarn. Nice and light, but is going to be warm. And this is, of course, the leftover yarn from that hat I made for my dad. So this is the Daruma Airy Alpaca, and it's a wool and alpaca blend, and I was excited to go ahead and use these all up. I do think this wool alpaca blend is a superwash, and of course this woolen spun woolly yarn is not, so I'll have to be very careful when I wash this. I will be hand washing it anyway because it's woolen spun, but there's the potential, if I felt this a little bit and the rest doesn't, that you get kind of a weird lumpy bumpy pattern. I am improvising just a little teeny tiny bit from the original pattern. You see a couple of stitch markers here, and these are actually where I have put in a bust dart. It probably doesn't look like much on here, but this is the underarm, and I just added a couple of rows to make a bust dart. I've actually never done bust darts. They're not something I've ever tried before, and just kind of on a whim, I thought, let's try it. Threw a few in on the fly, and we'll see how this fits. I think I just lied to you. I have done a bust dart once before. That was on the Luminosity pattern. It's by Tanis Lavelli, and that was already built into the pattern. And at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like, what is this? What are these random short rows here under the bust that I've never done before? But that sweater does fit me really well, so I'm hopeful that this sort of experimental bust dart will fit me as well too. And this is actually going to form sort of a nice transition into my acquisitions, my haul for the week, because I do have some more of the Knitting Barber cords that I was talking about on my last episode in this project, and they are from my new haul. So let me dig that out and I'll show you what is new in my Haxton House stash for the week. So I mentioned in my last episode that I had just bought some of these Knitting Barber, they're kind of like waist yarn. If you ever knit and they say, you know, put your stitches onto a stitch holder or waist yarn, these are exactly that. But the cool thing about them is that you can just sort of slide them onto the tip of your needle and they'll hold really fast and just slide and zip all of your knitting from your needle onto your waist yarn. I demonstrated it in my previous video, so we're not going to get real in-depth here, but yeah, put it right onto the tip of your needle and it holds pretty tight so you can just slide all of your working yarn onto it. And I have to say I'm in love with them, and so I went and bought more. So obviously I have the blue ones, I have the green ones you were looking at earlier, and I have some brown ones. They really are kind of a game changer, especially if you tend to have multiple sweaters on the needles, because they come with two shorter sections and a longer section, which is absolutely perfect for your two armholes and then the body of the sweater. So no sponsorship here. I just thought they were really cool. I will say they don't work super great for people who are using smaller needles. I tried them with this. This was, of course, knit on US size 0 needles, and I couldn't. It was not possible to easily slide all the things on. It was more work to do that. But what I actually ended up doing was grabbing myself one of my knitting needles. One of my darning needles here, and I slid it onto the tip of the needle and then picked up the stitches and pulled through that way. So that worked well. Probably about the same as using your own scrap yarn would, but super excited about them. I wanted more of them, but I didn't want to just buy them and have to pay the shipping cost. So what do? You buy yarn, right? I made a couple of purchases. So I have never knit from this shop, purchased from this shop before, but it's called Firefly Fibers. Firefly Fibers. I'm going to put this here because I am not 100% sure about that name right now. But I bought from them 2 of the Knitting Barbers. I also got these. Some of you are probably going to know what these are right away. These are from Coco Knits, and it's a needle gauge. So I don't know if you can see. They all just kind of hold really nicely together, and you can stick your needles through and do your needle gauge, because I'm always losing my needle gauges. I don't know what it is. I can never keep track of them. I think it's because they're all like this, and I like tuck them into the book page of a pattern or something and they disappear. So I'm hoping that these are going to last a really long time. And they're kind of cool. They look like plastic, but they are not. They came with a warning that said, please keep away from water because they're water porous, water absorbing. These are made out of a plant fiber. So they feel like plastic, but I don't actually know what they are. They're made out of some sort of plant fiber. So that was very cool. I'll show you all the little things first. Next was this guy here, which some of you have probably seen before. These are sort of keepers for your scarves. So if you have a scarf or a wrap it around yourself, and then you can apply these to hold them in place. And I actually really like these. I've always considered myself a cowl girl. I really like cowls. But I think I may actually become a convert to the way of the scarves and the shawls with one of these guys, kind of holding everything nicely in place so it doesn't fall off, it doesn't run away, or do anything weird. And of course I didn't do a great job styling this right now while you guys are all watching, but I think you get the idea. I think it's kind of neat too, because if you're hanging out in the winter and you want to take off your hat and your scarf and your cowl, but you're going to lose them all, as I always do. I always end up losing my mittens or something. My plan is to wrap them all up together in this thing and throw them in my bag. I think that would work nicely, right? That, of course, was the Waiting for Rain shawl that I did, and it is knit in Woolen Vine. It's knit on two of her bases. One of them is a merino single, and the other one is a merino nylon cashmere blend. And a little controversial, but I'm thinking about frogging it. I don't love it. It's not really quite me, quite my aesthetic. For now, I'm just going to leave it just like it is in that style. It's, whether I store it frogged or not frogged, I don't think it'll matter very much. And when the right pattern comes along, I may just frog that and then get back to work. One more knick-knack. This is the Wool Witch. I think this is supposed to be a knitting needle holder where you sandwich your knitting needles in there to keep it all in place, but I'm intending to use it just as a pin. It's a magnetic sort of enamel pin that says Wool Witch that I thought was really cute and clever. And of course, last but not least, I did buy yarn. So, I mean, come on, how could you not? This yarn I've actually never used before. Some of you, I'm sure, have. This is Amble by the Fibre Co. And it is a conscientious blend of washable merino wool, alpaca, and recycled nylon. I thought this would be an interesting sock or, oh gosh, my brain is saying mitten. I mean like your house slippers, that you wear. Slippers. Slippers is the word I'm looking for. I am planning on making some slippers out of these, and I actually really want to show them to you. So I'm going to pull them up here. The pattern that I was looking at was called the Capella slippers, and the picture on the project page is so pretty and stunning. It's just this really beautiful stranded color work, very mosaic, and the pictures I think are all brown, white, and black yarn. This is sort of this is reading a little bit more green than brown, but just beautiful yarn. I'm going to try to make a couple of pairs of slippers like that out of them, and if I have enough left over, so I'm planning on making 1 or 2 pairs of slippers out of these. And if I have enough left over, I really want to make a pair of socks like these. So these are socks. I did not knit these. I bought these. And I have long been thinking about making a pair for my own. I think I found the actual original pattern for these socks. I have them saved here on Ravelry, and it doesn't look like the name of it is English. It looks like it's a Roma Designs Rusa Soccer 072-7. I think that is the original pattern for this, but I've always wanted to make a pair of these for myself. I actually bought these. I bought them in Minot, North Dakota. It would have been between 2006 and 2010, because that's when I lived there, from a yarn or a thrift store. It was a thrift store attached to a church. So it was like in the basement of a church in Minot, North Dakota. And I bought 2 pairs of these. One of these was red, which you're seeing here, and the other pair was blue. And I have been wearing them all the time. I was just newly moved from Florida. Some of you know I'm a Floridian. I grew up in Florida, and we moved to North Dakota, and I was freezing to death. And my husband and I were very young and had very, very little money, and these really saved my life. when we first moved to Minot. I wore them all the time. They've gotten a little bit felted over the years from lots of wear. And I would love to meet the person or hear from the person who knit these. Like, I wonder if we could track that person down, because there was, of course, an excellent knitting community in Minot. That's really where I grew as a knitter, was with the local knitting yarn shop and group. Yeah, one day I'd like to try to figure out if I can track down. Come on, internet, let's do one of those like viral things where they track down who did this. I don't know. But yeah, so I've always wanted to knit these, and I think I will knit a pair of these with whatever yarn I have left over of this, if possible. But wait, there's more. All right, and last but certainly not least, I have a kit. Can you guess what it's for? Another hat. There's been a lot of hat knitting in my life. I can't explain it. It's what I want to knit right now. So this is from Hudson and West Co. And I have actually never heard of this company. I feel like I've been out of the US too long. There's all these like really great yarns popping up, and all of you watching are probably like, what the heck? Anyway, this is a kit for the Sunset Slouch beanie, and I love it. It is so, so cute. This yarn, I would not call it a woolen spun yarn, but it does kind of have a light, springy feel for it. It reminds me of the Brooklyn tweed yarns, but not their woolen spun, not the loft. I'm trying to struggle for the name of it right now. But what I love the best about kits like this is that it gives you just enough yarn, just like my other hat kit, to actually make the pattern. You don't have to buy, 12 balls of yarn and then wonder what to do with the rest of them. I'm struggling right now to get all of these into my hand to show them to you all at once. But here we are. Isn't that beautiful? It is just beautiful, beautiful rainbow. I love the color palette of this. I don't have it in rainbow order here, but you do knit it in a rainbow colorway. And I absolutely love that this pattern also comes with a little leather tag so that you can put it on there. And I think the most cleverest part about this tag is the way it is stamped. So if you don't fold the hat, it's right side up. And if you fold the hat, it's still right side up. I don't know why. I never really thought about that, but you want both of your tags. Yeah, you can't see that. Go in the same direction. And really, I don't think I'm going to use the tag. I think I'm going to order myself some custom tags of my own, but I've always really loved the little kind of leather tag touch when added to hand knit items, especially hats. So that is it. That is my haul. All of the knitting. It's been the hat episode. I do have quite a few sweaters looming in the background, and they'll just take a while. That's how it goes. So this one, I'm on to the body island, so I've got bodies and sleeves to knit. Usually for me, when a pattern gets to about this point, I put it into my car, and I usually get to work a couple of minutes early, and we'll sit and knit on that until I have to go into work. So this will become my car project, except I still have a car project going, which is, of course, the sweater that I showed you last week, the cardigan. So I also have another sweater, my Tecumseh sweater, which is back into the WIP pile because I decided I wanted to add a few more inches to it. So 3 sweaters on the needles, 5 hats done in the last couple of weeks, and another probably 2 more hats to go because I am probably going to do this and I'm going to finish up my other hat that's on the needles right now. So it's been a very productive knitting season. I have a couple more sweaters that I'm really excited to cast on for. I'm very much excited and looking forward to the future days. So those of you who aren't with my channel, I'm moving in a few months. So I'll be moving from warm, hot, tropical island of Okinawa to Germany. So nice and chilly and cold. It's exactly the kind of weather that I like. I am not a hot weather girl. So super excited. Of course, with the world events being what they are right now, Apprehension is also a word that I would add. There's obviously a lot of conflict going on in the world, and I hope that all of my viewers are safe, and I'm always hopeful that the world will choose peace and come to peaceful solutions. I, of course, don't want to delve into that rabbit hole. I feel like it's so easy to put your foot in your mouth in this era. So, with that, I think I'm all done. I'm so glad you joined me this week. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Haxton Knits. And I think I'm going to give up my Ravelry group. It's just not something I have the time and energy for, nor really the desire to do. I'm not super chatty, and I find it a little bit stressful to manage this group. So unless there's someone out there who's really excited about leading the way and making a chatty, happy environment in my Ravelry group, I will probably be shutting it down in the coming weeks. So sorry. Maybe one day if I retire and transition back to some sort of career in knitting, then we'll see about reopening it. But for now, it's going to just take a little bit of retirement. I don't really have the time or energy right now to keep it going, and I hope you're okay with that. And as always, I look forward to seeing you next week.